The most insane update for a mod pack in Minecraft history, a massive undertaking by the development team and community members, the 2.7 update for Gtnh New Horizons introduces 38 new multi-blocks and many quality of life changes, buffs, and nerfs that will dramatically change your gregging experience. Please sit back, grab a snack, and let's take a look at what's to come with the 2.7 Gtnh 10-year anniversary update. Note, there are hundreds of changes from 2.61 to 2.7. Not all changes are included in this video. In addition, many PRs have been linked in the description for the upcoming content. Let's start with Angelica, the alternative to Optifine for 1.7.10. Angelica has received major updates coming in the next version. The mod has received more compatibility, including limited shader support, such as complementary, a favorite amongst Gtnh players. Some additional features like zoom and connected textures will soon be available as well. The rewritten FTB Utilities backup and chunkloading mod for Gtnh server utilities has also received a prominent feature. You can now enable a config to only back up portions of your world that are chunkloaded. This will drastically reduce the size of the backup files saved to your instance or your server. This feature will be disabled by default, but you can enable it in the server utilities config when you update to 2.7. Active transformers no longer explode during structure check. Previously, a grace window existed for the player to hot swap hatches on a running AT before an explosion would happen. This grace window operated on a global timer, which was completely random. 2.7 now changes this mechanic so that ATs will now power fail if the player is outside the structure check grace period. Happy hot swapping. On the same note, explosions now generate less pollution for all you pollution enjoyers out there. Due to a typo from years ago, machines generated 2 million Gibble instead of the intended 100k. This has been fixed in 2.7 along with several config changes. P2P interfaces will no longer show in the interface terminal. This will clean up many interfaces you see when scrolling for patterns linked to the original P2P. The Holo projector has received a massive update in 2.7. Now, players can use the channel GT_no_hatch with value 1 to disable any GT hatches from being placed on a multi-block. In previous iterations, the Holo projector would pull random hatches and buses from your ME system and place them randomly on the desired multi-block. This change will now make building lines and multi-blocks faster, as you won't have to deal with trying to find any random hatches on your machine. Data orbs have gained an additional functionality in 2.7. You can now use them to copy hatches from multi-block to multi-block. This will drastically eliminate the spam of configuring every stocking input bus or hatch for circuit assembly lines and regular and advanced assembly lines. In combination with the Ring of Loki, setting up parallel multi-blocks will be a breeze. A backport of a new feature from Modern AE, a blue light, has been added to cells within ME chests and drives to indicate if a cell can accept a new item and type. This changes the previous behavior of the green light, which previously indicated acceptance of a new item and type, to now showing if the cell is empty. Orange and red lights have remained the same. The toaster from Cooking for Blockheads has been fixed to sit correctly on top of the counters. In previous versions, the toaster would float, dismaying many players. Everyone can now build their kitchens peacefully, knowing this design flaw has been fixed. Frame boxes are no longer tile entities when placed down in world. They will retain their functionality for covers, but you builders out there who want to build an entire room out of frame boxes can do so without fear of large-scale TPS issues. Circuits can now be converted into their any tier you would have seen in NEI previews. Previously, this feature indicated that you could put any circuit you could craft into the recipe, whether that was crystal processors or quantum computers, etc. Now, using the forming press, the any circuit item can be used in those same recipes. This will reduce time spent changing recipes when switching to a new circuit. This upcoming update has nerfed the Flight Potion and other open blocks potions. Previously, you could use any mob trophy for any recipe, including the popular early game creative Flight Potion. This has now been fixed to require the correct trophy for the right potion. The Large Essentia Generator, Large Processing Factory, and Processing Array have all been deprecated in 2.7. This means you will no longer be able to craft the controllers. However, if you had had them made before you updated, then you will still be able to use them if you desire. Deprecation on these multis will exist for 2.7, and the complete removal will occur in 2.8, meaning they will be removed entirely from the pack. 07 to these multi-blocks, they will be missed. Raw ores have now been added to the pack. If you've played modern versions of Minecraft, you will notice that this change mimics newer iterations, including the same texture. The ores are crushed variants and will slot into your current and future ore processing. All variants of ores from different dimensions will produce the same raw variant. In 2.7, 2 recipes have been moved from oil cracker to fluid heater, affecting your existing bauxite line and platinum line. This is a line-breaking change, and you will have to update your existing setup to reflect this new recipe. There was no fluid heater multi-block when the oil cracker recipes were implemented prior. This change made sense to implement because of the updates to the codebase and how recipes are now loaded, as it's more accurate than its previous iteration. There were significant changes to the output hatch and output bus ME versions. Before 2.7, these blocks cached items and fluids infinitely, meaning setting them up on a multi-block let them buffer any amount forever. This is no longer the case. Now, the ME versions require a storage cell to be inputted in the GUI of the block, and they will only store contents up to the maximum amount that the storage cell can hold. This will remove infinite caching until the endgame, when you can make singularity cells. However, any output hatches and output bus MEs placed before you update will keep their infinite caching capability. So if you want to have that feature for a bit longer, you can pre-place down hatches and buses before you update. 2.7 introduces a significant rework to turbines. Fast mode is no longer an option. All turbines now support loose fitting and get similar functionality as fast mode from the rebalanced loose flow formula. Based on efficiency, this exponential formula allows very large flow rates with high tier turbines. The PR linked below goes into the exact formula changes and includes the hyperlink to the dense steam PR, another change to how turbines work in 2.7. This means that for the player, you will have to change around your power spine in 2.7 to account for the new way turbines work. A new GT cover has been added for increased functionality to single block machines that utilize molds. Intended for the alloy smelter and extruder, players can now create 3 different covers: basic with 9 slots, good with 12 slots, and advanced with 15 slots that will hold exactly one of each cover for ease of access. This eliminates the need for a supply chest nearby to house your molds, requiring you to simultaneously navigate between inventories to extrude or alloy smelt multiple items. A new sound P2P type has been added to the pack. The P2P can proxy sounds generated in the block space, which is pointed at all P2Ps connected to the same frequency. Its functionality works with note blocks, jukeboxes, pistons, and block placing and breaking. Additionally, an electric jukebox with multiple features has also been created for the LV to IV tiers. Some examples include automating music discs with shuffle and repeat mode and seamless playback to the client between logging out and changing dimensions. High-tier fluid storage cells are now cheaper in 2.7. Previously, making any fluid storage above 64K required infinity plates, which was at a minimum in the UV tier. This has now been reworked to allow the player to make 256K and above in the early stages of the middle game. Output buses can now be locked to a single item. This can be utilized in various chem lines and grants you the ability to prioritize the output of a recipe to a concentrated item rather than dealing with the whole totality. The higher tiers of NAC fuel have been reworked to add some alternate recipes and a new one-step MK4 fuel recipe, which should reduce the spam of MK3 plus MK4 refineries. This buff is significant for endgame, as players who utilize this power source can scale more effectively throughout the later tiers before they reach the endgame power sources of Antimatter and Eye of Harmony. The research station has now been changed to include a scanner mode. In previous versions, you would have to continuously upgrade the scanner single block to account for the long recipe scan times. Now you can switch the mode on a research station with the screwdriver and improve scanning speed times with multi-amp or laser target hatches in the endgame. Laser hatches have been reworked in 2.7 to reflect a more standardized approach to providing power to your base and multi-blocks. Laser hatch amperage now starts at 256 amp in IV and unlocks 1 new amperage every tier. To keep tiering consistent, UMV and UXV gain a 4 million amp hatch variant, while UXV 16 million amp hatch also gets added. The newly reworked laser hatches can also be customized via screwdriver to accurately provide exact amperage to multi-blocks, giving more control to the player regarding how they want to distribute power around their base. A new laser mirror item has been added, allowing you to bend lasers without building an active transformer. The laser mirror is only for bending a laser in different directions, but will not transfer power into a multi-block. Doing so will still require building an active transformer. A new infinite spray can has been added that holds all the colors you need to spray ME and power cables. Tiered to UHV, this can is made in the Dire crafting table. The spray can can be locked to a specific color. Functionality includes left clicking to change the color when it's unlocked and middle clicking to pick a color for an already sprayed item. The infinite spray can also remove paint from sprayed items and has built-in Ring of Loki support. The Mega Vacuum Freezer has acquired some upgrades in 2.7. With new tiers called Subspace Cooling, the MVF undergoes a minor structure change to allow the freezer to be 8 times faster than usual. 3 coolant fluids, Spacetime, Spatially Enlarged Fluid, and Molten Eternity provide 1, 2, and 3 perfect overclocks, respectively. The quantum computer has been reworked to benefit players using higher tier circuits. Higher computation setups are unlocked as a player climbs the voltage tiers. This means changing all rack components, adding values to optical circuits and the cooling core, previously invalid items, and reworking the equations. The PR linked below goes more in depth about the equations and stable rack setups you may want to use for all your computations post 2.7. Post-UMV, quantum computers can also be upgraded to provide wireless computation. The output hatch uploads its computation to your team's wireless network, which multiple members can join. You can specify how much computation you want to pull from the network. In addition, databanks can be upgraded to store a wireless data stick network for your ASLANs and AALs. Multiple changes and additions have been made for resource and material usage post-UEV. Proto-halconite steel, initially made out of Infinity and eventually utilizing the Godforge, is now the base for recipes in UIV. Using Infinity as a base will reduce the spam of Infinity in the endgame and give players new materials with challenges that must be solved. A new fluid, dimensionally shifted superfluid, replaces lubricant in component recipes to reflect an overall passage into a new material category. The PR with these changes also includes recipes and additions for Tier 8 waterline, a down tiering of the plasma mixer and deep dark portal, and the addition of alternate metastable oganescent fusion recipes that allow the player to have some variance and choice for how they want to tackle the enormous amount needed to get Stargate. A new mode, Convergence, has been added to the dimensionally transcendent Plasma Forge. This changes the multi-blocks functionality, encouraging the use of the discount mechanic. When Convergence is active, the DTPF gains perfect overclock with the catch that the power from previous imperfect OCs gets added to the process recipe as an increased catalyst input. In addition, the output residue amount scales proportionally to the tier and amount of catalyst added to the recipe. The plasma mixer has been given a GUI that controls the number of parallels the machine can utilize. Previously, circuit stacking was used to give the plasma mixer more parallels, but this has been removed for a new mechanic that will give the player more control. As I mentioned in the intro, 38 new multis have been added to 2.7. Thank you to the many devs and community members who spent countless hours putting these together so that we could have a better GTNH experience. Let's start with Steam. There are 5 brand new Steam multi-blocks and a new water pump that you can use in the Steam tier to go along the previous mainstays of the grinder and the squasher. In addition to these new multis, they each have a second tier that can be unlocked by changing the casings from bronze to steel. Each of these multis base tier has a parallel of 8, which will increase to 16 with steel casings, giving you a nice boost to early game production at the cost of an investment of resources. The brewery now has a multi-block. With the processing array's deprecation, multis were added to the final single blocks that players use in a PA to gain any sort of parallel. This multi-block is unlockable in HV, is 50% faster than a single block of the same voltage, and will gain an additional 4 parallels per voltage tier. The TurboCan Pro is a new multi for the fluid canner and canning machine. It can do both fluid and item recipes with the screwdriver switching the mode. This multi-block has 200% the speed of single blocks of the same voltage and will gain 8 parallels per voltage tier. With the deprecation of a large processing factory, multiple multis were built to replace the functionality of the 9-in-1. The large fluid extractor, an EV tiered multi, is the first on the list we'll talk about. This multi is 50% faster than single block machines of the same voltage and will only use 80% of the EU normally required. However, included is the addition of solenoids, which give this multi-block parallels. The higher solenoid tier, the more parallels you will get. Additionally, every coil tier gives a 10% speed bonus and 10% EU discount. Energy hatch is limited by glass tier, and UEV glass will unlock all. The Fluid Shaper is the next multi to be added. The Fluid Shaper has 2 modes, fluid solidification and tool casting. Like its predecessor, the LPF, you can also use solidifier hatches to hold different molds. The Fluid Shaper at maximum is 200% faster than a single block equivalent and will decay at double the rate that it speeds up at. At base, it starts with 4 parallels and will gain an additional 3 parallels per width expansion and multiplied by voltage tier. Tool casting mode is the multi-block equivalent to the tool caster single blocks, which made single-use tools such as the wrench and crowbar for molecular assembler recipes. 2 new tiers of a dedicated compressor multi-block have been added. First, in EV is a stock standard compressor. The large electric compressor is now available. Later, this multi will upgrade into the hot isostatic pressurization unit with its own set of unique mechanics and recipes available. Eventually, you can craft the pseudo-stable black hole containment field, or black hole compressor for short. This endgame multi allows for improved singularity recipes and specific ones used in the Godforge. A new mechanic, black hole stability, is introduced, which requires the player to use a black hole activation catalyst to allow the multi-block to run. The black hole will slowly decay over time, with recipes running providing an additional 25% slower decay and molten spacetime halting the process altogether. Increased parallels are enabled when the stability is below certain thresholds, but be careful, if the black hole becomes unstable, it will void all the inputs for recipes that require it. Additionally, a dedicated neutronium compressor was also added to deprecate the aging avaricious single blocks that could not meet modern GTNH demands. The high-intensity laser engraver is the next multi to help replace the now deprecated LPF. The multi is tiered by borosilicate glass, which is forced, and the parallels are determined by the laser source hatch. However, this machine does not accept laser or multi-amp hatches. The source hatch only dictates how many parallels the machine does, but will still require regular energy hatches to operate. The Precision Industrial Lathe is up next. With this new multi-block and new tiering system, item pipe casings have been added. The higher tier, the better the resources that it can process. From the example on the tooltip, black plutonium casings, which is a boost of 4 plus HV voltage, reduces processing time to 57% of the recipe, making the machine 175% faster than its single block counterpart. The new multi-autoclave, based loosely on images from IRL large-scale autoclaves, follows the same tiering structure as the lathe from before. Each additional upgrade to the item pipe casing tier can process 12 items, and then energy consumption is reduced with higher fluid pipe tiers. Additionally, each coil level makes the machine 25% faster than the single-block autoclave of the same voltage. And finally, the last multi to replace the functionality of the LPF is a polarizer and electromagnetic separator. The magnetic flux exhibitor is a unique multi which requires an electromagnet in a specific housing in order to run recipes. The better the electromagnet you use, the better bonuses you will receive. With the Tengum electromagnet, Tengum being a resource in large demand in the late game that uses the separator function of this multi, you will be allowed to use multi-amp patches. The wormhole generator is a new way to transfer EU wirelessly with minimal loss. It needs an AE2 singularity to link two wormholes together and will transfer as much EU as possible between each laser hatch and laser source pair. A new way to make wafers has made its way to 2.7. The beam line is a set of 4 multis that can be combined to produce and transform subatomic particles. This line is inspired by real-world particle physics, and the multi-blocks for this line reflect that sentiment. The idea of the beam line is to have an expandable system with an additional challenge for any late-game items that may have a connection to particle physics. The process is as follows. You create electrons in a source chamber using an electrode item and EU per tick. The second step will be accelerating the electrons in the linear accelerator, or LINAC, to increase their energy. After that, you will put them through the synchrotron to create high-energy photons. Finally, you will use these photons combined with a photolithographic mask to engrave wafers. While the beam line is an optional line that is not forced for progression, the benefits of setting up the line are evident by the large amount of resources you get versus the standard laser engraver recipe. The new and reworked water line allows you to produce 8 tiers of purified water, starting at LUV and scaling to Stargate. It features 8 unique multi-blocks in a 32 cubed area around the main controller structure, with increasingly complex automation challenges unlike anything you've seen before in GTNH. These will have you push the limits of your Redstone, SFM, or open computer skills to create setups for purified water successfully. In addition to the new challenges, over 15 beautiful and new casing blocks, new textures, and custom NEI artwork have been added to complement each process. This line is complete rebalance of purified water to make it more relevant to all game stages, with complete lore entries to immerse yourself fully in water purification. Antimatter is a new scaling power generation option available in UIV, providing an alternative to Dyson spheres and Nakoda fuels. Antimatter is created using the new semi-stable antimatter stabilization sequencer, or antimatter forge, which introduces a unique automation challenge. Energy is extracted by annihilating antimatter in the shielded Lagrangian annihilation matrix with various molten metals, generating enormous amounts of EU in large bursts. The forge can use multiple tiered fluids to boost production, allowing antimatter energy to scale as you go up the tiers to the Stargate. The Forge of the Gods, aka Godforge or Gorge, is a megastructure designed to use the raw power of an artificial neutron star to fulfill all late-game smelting needs and more, while only ever needing 1 copy. It is a massive multi-block with 1 to 3 rings spinning around a neutron star and a focusing area containing space elevator-esque modules that process the recipe. Most of this multi-block's power and scaling potential stems from an extensive upgrade tree, featuring 31 unique upgrades that grant various bonuses from simple speed boosts to new mechanics such as special overclocks. These upgrades can be unlocked by spending graviton shards, a currency gained by reaching certain milestones in the forge. There are 4 types of modules which are gradually unlocked by expanding the upgrade tree. The first and simplest module is the Helioflare Power Forge, which can do regular EBF and furnace recipes. Due to its simplicity, it gets extra powerful upgrade bonuses and can reach extreme heat levels. The second module is the Helioflux Melting Core, which, similarly to the Power Forge, can process EBF recipes, but with the twist that it outputs molten metals instead of ingots. This relieves a lot of stress on vacuum freezers due to skipping the freezing step altogether. The third module is the Heliothermal Plasma Fabricator, which directly produces plasmas from raw materials by heating them up to appropriate temperatures. Upgrades unlock higher processable plasma tiers, going up to plasmas that previously could not be fused. The fourth and final module is the Heliofusion Excitizer, which can produce 2 kinds of exotic matter, quark gluon plasma and mag matter, which have unique automation challenges that must be solved for the module to function. With these upgrades and modules, all late to endgame smelting needs should be well covered, with room for expansion for any future content. And with that, we've reached the final massive update to 2.7, the nerf of the Stargate recipe. As expected with such a major update, the recipe for the Stargate has gotten harder, adding in elements of the Godforge and other late game additions and changes. While there's no way to quantify how much longer the pack has theoretically gotten with the nerfs of the Stargate recipe, I can guarantee the journey will be longer and definitely still rewarding. The 2.7 anniversary update will be released on December 8th, 2024. Stay tuned to the official Gtnh Discord, link in the description, for announcements and any other information regarding the update, and catch me live at twitch.tv/AdityaG_, talking about all things 2.7. I appreciate you all for taking the time to watch this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.